Hey guys, this is Vu. Today I just want to talk about something that's been on my mind lately. As some of you guys know, me and my family, we're immigrants from Vietnam. And we came to the US about 30 years ago. And lately, there's been a lot of anti-immigrant backlash, especially within the US, a nation that's known for immigrants. The US was founded by immigrants, and a lot of I say our because I consider myself an American, our history was built and developed on the backs of immigrants. So it is really jarring to me that we are moving in this sort of anti-immigrant direction. And one of the things that I just really want to talk about is the value of immigrants. So I always hate to, when it comes to people, I always hate to break it down whether they're valuable or not, because it kind of makes people less like people and more like objects that it's the one of the few things where we could kind of quantify and have an argument that is that we're able to quantify the value of more holistically than just saying, "Oh, immigrants are good for because of the idea of immigration being good." So, a few arguments that I've seen lately from these nativists is that we want to get back into the good old times in U.S. history when America was at its zenith, at its peak. So a lot of the times that they reference is this post-World War II, 1950s, 1960s era when baby boomers, they've started, coming of age. And this is reflected in an idea that this is the high point of America, where we are at our strongest, where the economy was good, where everything was good. But I think this is some sort of fake nostalgia that's got a lot of people moving in the wrong direction. So one, the 1950s were good for a lot of Americans, and most Americans, but only if you were white. No, that's pretty much true. Imagine being a black person or any person of color in the 1950s when segregation was still a thing. If you have any rudimentary study of American history, separate but equal was around, and things, although were separated, were not equal. And that's why there was this huge Supreme Court case in the 1950s called Brown versus Board of Education, that argued that this whole separate but equal movement that was around for decades before that separate whites from people of color was not equal. And so the Supreme Court back then struck down the separate but equal arrangement. And so the argument is that in the 1950s, things were not good if you were not white. Two is that the economy was good back then. If you really think about why the economy was good in the 1950s, one, the World War II was just over. Basically, the economies of Europe and Asia were completely destroyed, and the U.S. was pretty much left untouched. And we were able to manufacture goods and services and supplies to the other nations who eventually paid us back. So that allowed us to come out on top. And not only that, we were able to bring out, because we were such good shape, and there was this whole war against, this Cold War against the USSR, the Soviet Union, post-World War II, So we had this ideological conflict with the Soviet Union between capitalism and communism. And we managed, because one, we live in a capitalistic society and we have a much better economy. In the long run, a capitalist society will outperform a communist society economically, period. There's no argument about that. And we were able to attract the best talents from all over the world. One, because we had the better capitalist economy, but two is because the Soviet Union's entire infrastructure was almost completely destroyed because the Germans had invaded in 1942. So, 1941, Operation Barbarossa. So, because of that, that allowed us to attract the best of the best immigrants from Germany and from other countries, from Japan, and allowed us to build out our economy using the best immigrants. So, my argument is that the immigrants that came here post-World War II made huge contributions. If you think about it, Einstein was an immigrant from Germany, escaping Nazi persecution. All the German scientists that we attracted in the 1950s, that built up NASA and that allowed us to win the space race against the Soviet Union by landing on the moon, they were all immigrants. If we think about all the contributions of immigrants in American society, America would not be the economy it is without immigrant contributions. So now that's when we're talking about these types of immigrants, they are the top of the top, the smartest of the smartest. So, but let's talk about illegal immigration. The U.S. does have the right, definitely, to secure its borders. We don't know who's coming in. We have the right to control who comes in. People can't just come in willy-nilly. That is without an argument. Right now, there are around 30 million immigrants, illegal immigrants, within the U.S. That is almost 1/10 of the population of the entire country. You cannot realistically deport 10% of the population without it contributing to an economic recession or maybe depression within the country. So, in economics, there are three ways to contribute to an economy: either labor, capital, or technology. So, when we talk about the very highly skilled immigrants, they contribute enormously to labor, capital, if they have a lot of money, and technology from all their innovative contributions. When we talk about illegal immigrants, they contribute using labor, and labor is one of the three pillars that contributes to an economy. So, when you expel 1/10 of your labor force, you will harm your economy. Now, we look at other countries within the world. Look at Japan. Japan right now just elected a hardline conservative woman as their first female prime minister. She is very anti-immigrant, but that doesn't make sense because Japan barely has immigration anyways. So if you see the decline of Japan in the past 20-30 years, and that correlates exactly with their decline in population. They have very low birth rates while being anti-immigrant. So their birth replacement is below zero. So they are not replacing For every one person that dies, they are not replacing it with either new births or with imports from immigration. So because of that, their economy has been very stagnant within the past 20, 30 years. That's one part. Japan has a multiple issues, but I don't want to get into that. Now, what we've seen lately is this uptick in ICE raids. And initially, President Trump promised they would go after all the illegal immigrants that have felonies and the criminals, basically. Currently, the vast majority of illegal immigrants as of October do not have any record at all. So since July or June, like 70 or 80% of the immigrants that have been arrested do not have any prior convictions. So now, because of there are quotas, ICE, the Immigration Enforcement Agency, ICE has quotas to keep in order to get their $50,000 bonuses and all their signing bonuses, and to meet these quotas, they have to arrest illegal immigrants who do not have any record. So what we're seeing right now is that within farming there is a huge demand for labor that is not being filled by American replacement workers. So what we're seeing is food prices are increasing, much more so than the tariffs. One, because the crops aren't being picked, the livestock are not being fed, the transportation logistics, which is filled with a lot of immigrants, so many times illegal, they are not. There's not enough drivers out there. So we're seeing prices of produce, of dairy, of meat starting to skyrocket. So I went to the supermarket last week, and a pound of meat, anecdotally, was twice as much as it was 6 months ago. So 6 months ago, that was the start of the tariffs, which I initially had predicted that it would kind of contribute to a huge drop in the stock market, which we have not seen. So so I was completely wrong about that, and I will admit. One of the things I did not foresee was that, which I should have seen, was that Trump had backed out in most of these tariffs. So there were a lot of exceptions, exemptions, and loopholes that allowed people to bypass these tariffs. And so effectively, they were not as bad as when he first announced it back in March. But what we've seen from these ICE raids is shortage of labor in many ways that's contributing to much more to inflation and these skyrocketing prices than these tariffs. And what we've seen is that they're no longer going after these bad guys, but the vast majority are now illegal immigrants or even green card holders that criticize the Trump government. And because of that, the vast majority, they do not have any records. We're just locking up people. They're disappearing. And everyone's scared to talk about it. People are scared to lose their jobs. Even green card holders who are supposed to be permanent residents, they're getting their green cards revoked for just speaking out. And yeah, I just wanted to speak in my mind because, America is founded on the principle that that immigrants would come here from all over the world and make our society great. So if you want to make America great again, import and allow more immigrants to come to the U.S. because immigrants have the lowest crime rate compared to native populations. Immigrants have the most education, the highest education. Immigrants eventually have higher incomes because of this higher education and the most drive. And so all of this anti-immigrant rhetoric, which is contributing to a decline in the number of tourists that's visiting the U.S., also hurting the economy, all the destruction of pretty much so much food and agriculture right now in the labor market for that, contributing to the increase in food prices. In the long run, this is going to be very harmful to the U.S. and we're seeing a huge brain drain away from the U.S. A lot of people within academia are leaving the U.S. for other countries such as Canada and China and Europe. So the U.S. became what it is because we were able to take the best talents from other countries and keep them here, let them raise their families, and their families in turn grew and increase the productivity of the U.S. What we're seeing with these anti-immigration policies is that there's a brain drain away from the U.S. into China, into Europe, into Canada, exactly the opposite of the 1950s that a lot of these natives are claiming was the high point of the U.S. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you and have a good night. Bye.